Check out this great testimony.
Oftentimes, it seems like yesterday, because that's how fast time flies. But anyway, I grew up in a home with a mom and dad. Three other siblings. I had one older brother, and my sister. I have a sister. We're 11 months apart. We refer to ourselves as twins, and I have a younger brother, Craig. Both my older brother and my younger brother are both deceased. I'll talk about that here briefly in a moment. But we grew up in a very stressful home, and so a lot of things that we learned was really survival in our home. Our dad was what today they kind of coined it as an absentee dad. Basically, he was very abusive. He was not just abusive verbally, but he was abusive physically. He was abusive sexually, morally, any way you could think about it. And so the family, we lived in fear. And so he basically got away with whatever he wanted to do. And all of my aunts and uncles, my dad is one of 11. He was the baby of that bunch. And all the way up until the time of his passing a couple of years ago, he passed away during COVID. But everybody in the family would baby him because he was the baby of the bunch. So he always got, he created fear. Everybody just kind of let him do whatever he wanted to do. So during those early years, when I say more sexual immorality, it was not just with, my sister, but it was with the boys. It was all of us, and Mom knew about it, but she was, she couldn't say anything because, he would, beat her or do. And so, matter of fact, it got so bad one time that my brother and I, we would sleep with a baseball bat underneath our bed.
Oh, wow.
And we said if he hit my mom one more time, we were going to go and wait till he goes to sleep and just take him out with this bat. We never did because we was afraid that if we didn't kill him, that he would kill us.
Yeah.
And so that's the kind of fear. And I can go on and on, not to go down that. But anyway, so that became who I was. In a typical family, we had curfews, all the typical family, But when I would go out and hang out with my friends we all were street, mini gangs and drugs and you name it. So that was my life growing up. And so about the time, I was in high school, trying to play sports and stuff. And my dad would punish me, tell me I couldn't go to practice. I was pretty good at football. But he would punish me in ways that, like, why would you punish your child for something that he could probably be beneficial, be good, So anyway, so really jack of all trades, master of none, as growing up. So my 11th grade, I signed up to go in the military. And and because I had to get out of Jersey, because that's either you were in a gang or you were, you were dying. It was just a community. And it's like you had to get out. That was my thing. I got to get out of here. And my oldest brother, speaking about that, he wanted out, so he did. He did a drug overdose. He died of a drug overdose. My younger brother was kind of like following. He never got his act together. He was always it affected him more emotionally than my sister and I. But just a couple of years ago, he ended up passing, and and the doc said he had fentanyl in his system, and so so that struggle becomes really real, and it becomes painful when you start losing loved ones.
Yeah.
But anyway, my 11th grade year in high school, I signed up to go in the Marine Corps, and my parents signed off for me to go. So 2 weeks out of high school, I'm standing on the yellow footprints down at Parris Island, South Carolina. Didn't waste any time, I was out of there. I didn't care about the little girls I was chasing around and all the other promiscuous stuff. Like I said, I got to be careful talking about my dad because I was, the apple didn't fall far from the tree because I was the same characters and behaviors I was doing, and so, so I had to get out of there. I went in the Marine Corps and next thing I know, 20 years later, after that, but yeah, so that's what those early years were like. And it seemed like the family was outside our nuclear family, primary. Everybody we loved to get together. It was cookouts. It was always, but, no matter what, something crazy would happen. And so I was like, I'm not going to college. That's not, and I can't stay in the streets because I see how that ends up, all around us. Death was all around me. So, God opened up the door, and I didn't know the Lord. So I'm just living as a sinner, as a lost person. Went in the military and I excelled. I went, I was in boot camp. I was just sharing with someone yesterday, my grandson, I was like, when you go in the military, you have some basic, introductions and things of that nature, and they kind of see who's got the stuff. And so I was immediately, appointed as a squad leader. And so, I'm at boot camp, and basically during that time, if anybody in your squad messed up, the squad leader was going to get the punishment.
Okay.
And then you're going to get it with your squad for not, make sure that they were, where they need to be, or so I was all in, and again, this is a controlled environment. So I go to my first duty station. And I realized, hey, man, I got all this freedom. I'm making a little bit of money. And guess what? I was doing the same stuff in the military that I was doing back at home on the streets. And so, but very early on, I was, I got connected with this gang, and we were, a lot of fighting and things of that nature. And so we got into some trouble, myself and some other members of this gang, and so within the first year, I was being put up for bad conduct discharge, the BCD, the 6-6 and the kick, they call it.
Okay.
And so so I hadn't told my folks or anything. I was like, that's the last thing. I mean, I probably would have went somewhere else. I probably would not have gone home or so. But anyway, so as I'm being processed for this discharge, I was being processed for a general court-martial, which incorporated the 666, we call it. So during this time, there was another young Marine, a Lance Corporal. He was married with children, and he had orders to go to Hawaii. And so he's walking, and he's like trying to get out of his orders. And the admin department, administrative department, they was working on trying to, because they had to fill the billet because the orders come down from headquarters of Marine Corps, Washington, D.C. And we were in Paris Island, South Carolina, so we didn't have any power. It's like, all right, if he can't go, who's going to go?
Yeah.
And so I happened to be walking by, and they said, hey, PFC Wallace, you want to go to Hawaii? And I'm like, well, I can't. I'm going to get this discharge. He said, well, we'll go ahead and take care, we'll get that dropped if you go ahead and take these orders.
Wow.
And I'm like, I'm there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and I mean, I don't know. I'm just living life. I don't know nothing about it. I'm not giving God any glory. I'm just like living.
Yeah.
So I go to Hawaii, and I have a successful tour there. I do a deployment. I was Desert Shield, Desert Storm, and all that. And but just had a really successful tour. I was with the right people over there. I still was getting in trouble, but I wasn't repeating those early behaviors because I already knew what that looked like, and I didn't want to have that, in my life. So, but I just found out how to do it more smoothly. I just became more. So after that, so I leave, I do a 3-year tour in Hawaii, and then I go back to Camp Lejeune. Excuse me, not back, but now I go to Camp Lejeune where I meet Suzanne.
Okay.
Well, actually, we didn't meet in Camp Lejeune. Excuse me, let me get my timeline. I leave from Hawaii and go to Pennsylvania,
Okay.
Horsham, Pennsylvania, and there was a air wing station there, and so that's where I meet her. And the irony, you can just it's just crazy how things turn out, but. I couldn't stand female Marines because there's so few of them, and so it seemed like all the guys would be hitting on them, whether we're going to the club to have drinks or whatever. So I was like, I'm not going to be that guy. So her and I, we worked at 2 different parts of this unit, and I wouldn't give her the time of day, and in our duties, you could do other cool things. Like it's kind of like the Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts. The Marine Corps has what they call a young Marine program.
Okay.
So I would volunteer to do this young Marine program. Little to know Suzanne, my wife today. I mean, she would volunteer, and then all of a sudden we're working together.
Okay.
With this young Marine program, and through all this time, we're kind of now small talking. Now we got to work together, because we come to find out that when I was down at admin school, when I was down there on legal hold, she was there going through her admin school, and because we both had the same, administrative background, and we started showing each other's pictures, and we're both in each other's pictures. I mean, not us, the same people are, but neither, but her and I.
Yeah.
And so we're like, man, I know so-and-so. I know so-and-so. Yeah, we used to go here. And yet her and I was not in each other's pictures.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so we started to connect more and more. And so one night we're working with these young Marines, and it's pouring down the rain. And this is the time they have shelter halves. So one Marine has half of a tent, the other Marine has the other half, and you get your tent poles, and you got to show them how to put the tent. And it's just pouring down. It's all muddy. And her and I are out there doing this together. And we had a blast. And so that was like the first time that her and I, like, from that point on, we just started just connecting. And so and we didn't officially date, but we kind of call it that. Our unit, I worked on the reserve side of the house, and the reserves do 2 weeks after the 2-week training. So the unit that I was with, we were doing our 2-week training in Cecil, Florida. Well, the active duty side, they don't get a chance to travel like that. So they said, let me get an opportunity to go with one of these reserve units so I can, get away, so I can get out of this office. So lo and behold, Suzanne goes to the same training with the unit that I was, responsible for. And needless to say, that was the trip to Cecil, Florida, that her and I, officially said, hey, we're dating. This is for real.
Okay.
And that's where she started finding out all my stuff. It's easy to date, when you just get the, you look good in your uniform, you talk the good game, but now you're starting to hang out with me, and you're like, man, this guy, he needs some help.
Yeah.
See, I didn't know that, in these travels, like when I went to Hawaii, she went to Okinawa.
Okay. Okay.
And so that's, and when she went to Okinawa, she got born again. That's where she, under the Navigator ministry, that's where she got to know the Lord.
With the Navigators?
With the Navigators.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
So she has a deep roots there.
Okay.
And so she goes to Pennsylvania, to Horsham, Pennsylvania, or Willow Grove, and I get there, and kind of fast forward, we get, she's born again, I'm not, and now she's realizing that this guy, he's got some dents in his armor.
Yeah.
Something ain't right. So we started getting very serious. I started introducing her to my family.
Yeah.
And, this is funny. I mean, it's funny to me, but maybe it's not funny. But I take her to to my aunt, one of my aunt's house, and all of the aunts are in this kitchen, small kitchen. And if you know anything about Black women, you know, when you start getting up there, nobody can cook like you.
Okay.
And so this kitchen is filled with these 4 of my aunts, and they're all like got fried chicken. I mean, they got they got it going on, and they're drinking their favorite drink, Johnny Walker Red. I can remember
Okay.
and so I take. You got to remember, I'm not born. I'm living my life. This is an opportunity to go back and hang out with my boys for a little while. So I drop her off. She's never met these ladies. I drop her off. I go and hang out with my boys. Come back in 1 o'clock in the morning or something. She is fuming, But I would say if anything came out of that, my aunts loved Suzanne like you wouldn't believe it. I mean, she was in.
Yeah.
And when they found out that she had a fiery side to her, they was like, yeah, that's my girl.
That's funny.
but I remember she said, Kurt, she said, don't you ever do that to me again.
Yeah.
And she was so serious. I was like, I'm so sorry. I'll never. I lost track of time. So anyway, so that's how she got introduced into the family. And even my mom, bless her, man, she was like, because I used to, because of the abuse of my mom, she was like my girl. So, any way I could bless her, whether, I'm in the military making money, I would always send her gifts. I always was writing her letters. I mean, she was my girl.
That's cool.
And so when I introduced Suzanne to her, it took a little while. My mom told me, she says, I realized that Suzanne's going to be your wife, and I so she has to be a priority. I can't be the priority anymore. And I was like, because she was like taking it personally for a while there.
Oh,
and I was like, cool, Mom, that's cool. But she never, she got double blessing because Suzanne would bless her just as much as I, as far as time and, being with her and, and all that. But, so anyway, yeah, so we, now we're in this serious dating relationship and we get to a point where, I'm thinking about marriage. And I think it's the first time she stuck to her gun. She said, I don't want to marry someone who's not a Christian. And so I felt hurt for her because I loved her so much. And it started bringing up, because in this time of dating, we started living together. We went through an abortion together. We made a lot of mistakes. Nobody was mentoring. I didn't know, only thing I knew is what I knew. Yeah. And when she shared that with me, I hurt for her because I knew that she was a Christian and I was not doing good by her. And so one morning, being at this reserve station, oftentimes you'd work weekends and you'd get Monday and Tuesday off.
Okay.
And so one morning she got up to go to work and I'm laying in the bed and the Lord speaks to me. Now, I knew about the Lord because of that youth pastor. I knew about the Lord because of my mom's faith. I knew about the Lord because my grandma, my great grandma, who was a part of our lives early on. And so I'm laying in bed this morning, and Suzanne gets up to go to work, and I hear this voice speak to me just as audibly as I'm speaking to you now. And he says, Kurt, if you don't receive my son Jesus as your Lord and Savior, you're going to die and go to hell. And all I could remember was like those flashcards every time, that God was making himself known to me. Or, and I laid in the bed that morning, I cried like a baby, and I said, Lord Jesus, come to my heart and save me. I said, I don't know what to do next, but I'm going to trust you. Yeah. And I mean, to words to that, just as audible, I mean, And from that point on, I just, God, you shift.
Yeah.
That was my shift.
Yeah.
That's where life became real, and I knew that I was a responsible adult.
Yeah.
And I remember sharing that with Suzanne, and man, she was so happy. And she said, all that time while you were living here, living with her, she said, I wanted to tell you to leave, but I was afraid I would lose you. And I remember telling her, I said, Suzanne, I loved you so much, I'll just sleep outside your doorstep. If that's how, that's just how, I'm an emotional guy.
Yeah.
I was like, if that was where, if whatever boundaries you set, that's, because I've been in other relationships, and there was something special about this one here, and so so after that, it was a couple months later, and I was I'm again just putting my laundry out there. It's like, I asked her for her hand in marriage, and she said yes, and I put the ring on the wrong hand. I don't know nothing about nothing. I'm just. And she said she's crying, and she's like, "But you put it on the wrong hand." And I'm like, "Oh, well, so I do stuff like that, but I could blame, my dad. I could blame the culture. I could blame. No, this was on me.
Yeah.
I choose. I know. There's a yes and there's a no. And so, yeah. That's why I said, would you go back? Do you want to go back and you want to do it? No, I don't want to do that over. I'm glad. But she said yes, and we got married, and then that point I just brought a new chapter for us, a new set of struggles.
Okay. Yeah.
Marriage is not easy. We've been married 40 years now. We just, just passed,
That's awesome.
just a few months ago, hit our 40-year anniversary. But when we got married, I had already had a set of orders already.
Okay.
And the orders was for me to go to Okinawa now.
Okay.
And we couldn't change it. Normally, if you do an accompanied a married tour, it's a 3-year, you go together.
Okay. Okay.
So this time, and so we didn't want to do that. We eventually went together later on. It seemed like we did like 3 tours there, okay. But this time when I go there now, I'm a believer. I'm like, okay. And the hardest thing, I wish I could say that I did the best decisions. It's like when I remember getting on that plane, and the first thing I said was, man, I wish I had told her I loved her one more time. I wish I had given her, one more big hug, But now I'm like, I'm going for the next year, and because we were, the type of orders that we were on, she didn't get any financial, like living expenses or any of that. So it was like she was just living as this married woman by herself. We had a dog at the time. That was our kid. And so she's trying to make it work. And I'm in Okinawa, Japan, living good off the military, going to eat, the meals and our chow hall, we call it. And every time I speak to her, she's like, I'm having peanut butter and jelly again, or whatever. I'm like, oh man. But anyway, and that was probably that was the worst part, because during those times communication wasn't the best. You'd have to use these landlines in the middle of the night, and you'd be talking, and you're not sure. They would just cut off in the middle of a conversation. So it'd be bills, or whatever the stuff that we had to take care of. Love you, and then all of a sudden, then you wouldn't be for the next couple of nights that you could get access again.
Okay.
So that presented some early struggles, and but I will say this: when I went to Okinawa, that's where I was discipled.
Okay.
That's where, you want another shift. This was like.
So what happened there?
That was probably the best thing for our marriage, for me to go to Okinawa for that year. because I would have probably tried to control the scenario of how we were going to live life if I'd have stayed there. Because I was born again, but I still had old habits and stuff.
Yeah.
So anyway, I get to Okinawa, go into my room. I have 2 roommates. It's a Friday night, and they're drunk as a skunk.
Yeah.
And I have my duffel bag, and I just dropped my duffel bag, and I said, Lord, you sent me all the way here to put me back in this environment with these crazy folk. And so I didn't know. So it was Friday. I said, where can I go get something to eat? So I said, yeah, you can go down to the staff club, and they're still open. You get something to eat. So I'm walking to the staff club. It's only maybe 100 yards, maybe 150 yards away from where we're at. And I look over in the chapel, and there's a light on in the chapel. And this is the Lord. I detour to the chapel, and there's a gentleman by the name of Bob Skinner. He's with the Lord now. He was a part of the Overseas Christian Servicemen Center, and he was there as a missionary.
Okay.
And he had a group of young adults, young Marines, and male and female, and they were having Bible study. And I just went there and I sat in the little back, just a row behind it. Wasn't, probably about maybe 15, 20 of them.
Okay.
And from that point on, that was my posse.
Okay.
We went all over that island just from the sake of just learning how to have fun with people that love the Lord.
Yeah.
Number one.
Yeah.
But number 2, he taught me the ABCs of Christianity. He discipled me in a way. I'm serious. It was like the angel. The A was the angel. The B was the birth. C was the carpenter. D was the dove. E was evangel. From A to Z, he discipled me, and I just I'll just do my life. and there was others, but there was like, so it was during that time where I was learning, and I got hungry for the Word of God. I got hungry for to know Him, and before I even knew about a commentary, I would take the Gospels, I would take the Paul's epistles, and I'd be writing my own commentary.
Oh, that's cool.
And I would write a whole dissertation on marriage, and I'm getting everything. I was so hungry to get what I was supposed to get, and not only that, but I was excelling in my job. So so that opened up opportunity for witnessing, because even the general officers that I worked for, they would oftentimes bring me in their office and ask me to pray for them.
Yeah.
Or they were in. It was not uncommon for people to live in Okinawa and be in adulterous relationships. And so I would go to my boss's office, and he would unload on me, and I'm like, and I would come out, I'm like, man, that was, praise God, that would be my thing, but, and I tell folks all the time, if you want influence, do your job.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I did my job, not just there, but whether we were going on training or whatever, I was like the guy. So, so when I came back home, so that tour, that 1 year went by so fast, and I'm telling you, I was a different person. When I came home, Suzanne didn't know who I was. She heard me talking the talk, but when I came home, I was totally different. She was like, that's the guy. Yeah, and I come back home, and it's funny, Susanna, our first interaction after we embrace and we're like, all that fun stuff, she grabs the checkbook and she almost throws it at me and says, I don't have anything else to do with this ever again. Because all she did was struggle that whole year.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, there's another moment. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was, and we ended up working it out. And I don't think she's ever looked at a checkbook ever since. I just have to like, babe, we're struggling. Just let's cool it down. Yeah, I just like, time to hit that yellow button, hit that red button. We're good. We can't. So she understands the language.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So since like I said, we got 40 years in here, but we're still learning. So we started having children. God was still good to us. So so Justin, our oldest, and then Jessica, and so that was a struggle in the early military life. Now we're married, young children, and I sensed this call of God in my life. Because here's a guy that's been cutting school, his whole high school, learn how many classes I can cut so I can get my C.
Yeah.
Work the teachers over, and now I'm looking to go to college. So it was a very busy time for us. As a young family, and oftentimes like I'm doing this because this is what God called me to do. So I'm trying to go to college, and we're still, in the Marine Corps, we were like getting, every 3 years we're going to a new duty station. So a lot of times, a lot of classes I was taking were repeat classes because the next school that I went to, they didn't have all the distant learning and stuff like that they have now.
Yeah. Okay.
So I ended up taking just a bunch of classes before I could even get into any ministry kind of classes. But anyway, so that brought a real challenge to our marriage because I'm, going to school, she's, trying to take care of the kids, and she's an active duty Marine herself. And, so we're trying, and I'm, and because of my job that I had in the military, I was, oftentimes going TAD for a week, even up to a month at a time. So she'd be with the kids, and no family to support. We didn't have any family close by, or because of the duty stations we were at. And so, so those early years presented a real struggle. So we just kept pressing through, and we found a good church when we actually went back to got stationed in North Carolina. We were going to Enon Chapel Baptist down there, and by the grace of God, we got connected with some folks there that just mentored us, just took the next level of mentoring, and it was just amazing. And some old dudes too, and I was like, okay, and they were all fishermen, and but it was through there we kind of like found our gear. We started, figuring this thing out a little bit. And so it took me every bit of 10 years of my military career to finally get my my bachelor's in biblical studies.
Okay.
And
awesome.
And then later on, when in ministry, God was calling me to plant a church. So that's what I said, that marriage to me, we kind of like we're like grinding together, But Suzanne, when we were having this conversation, she said, well, whatever God calls you to do, he's calling me, because if we don't have agreement,
that's cool. Yeah.
And so I always appreciate that. So I was, so that I felt like that gave me a real opportunity to be open with her as far as what I felt God was calling me to do. And it wasn't more so calling me, but calling us.
Yeah.
And so she started connecting with, in ministry. She was excelling herself as far as just, learning to serve. So eventually, as the kids, were, again, we both did 20. I did 20. She did 21 years in the Marine Corps. And because of the job that I had, I was working at for the presidential squadron. I had done a couple of different presidential inaugurals
cool.
for the Marine Corps, and and had to set up a lot of things for a couple of different presidents. And so I pretty much had whatever job I wanted as far as government coming out of there. I mean, second time the Holy Spirit speaks to me. I mean, He speaks to us all the time. It's the second time there was like almost like inaudible.
Yeah. I've
got my resume. I'm pretty much ready to check out of our unit. I mean, and I've got my resume left, and I'm just kind of ready to start giving it out to a couple of folks that wanted me to give it to them. And the Lord spoke to me, says, take that resume, put it in the drawer, and close the drawer. So I open up the drawer, I close it, And I go home. I told Suzanne. She's like, "You did what?" God told me to put the resume in the drawer, and I guess it's for somebody else. They could change the name, you know. And yeah, so that was our leap of faith as a couple now.
Yeah.
And so, but I, God says He never sees the right. He never see the righteous forsaken and begging for bread. Mm-hmm. And these are very. I mean, I'm in it. I mean, we're yeah. So it's just we're just trusting God. So anyway, we plant a church, and that was a whole nother shift, if you might call it, as far as what how we we're living life now. Again, we had not just our own struggles growing as a married couple, but now we're struggling with the church, a new church plan. It was non-denominational church, so it doesn't have a lot of financial oversight. Mm-hmm. Matter of fact, the church that sent us out, they gave us a check for like, a couple $1,000 and, say, have a nice day.
Wow.
But we had a really strong, youth following, because we were, we had cut our teeth on being in youth ministry for a few years. Okay. And so a lot of the families of the parents of those youth came out with us. And we began to grow just, pretty quick. And that's when we had written the first book, Church Search, because we felt like folks were just needed some help finding, how to find a church. But anyway, and so during that time, all right, so we plant the church is doing well, and God says, all right, I want you to go back to school. Mm. So now I go back to get my master's in religious studies, and I'm kind of hearing that voice again. I'm like, I'm tapping brakes a little bit, But so I go back to school again, and so I'm like, not only does my wife have to step up, but everybody else has to step up, because I got a lot going on here. Yeah. And the kids are in dance and football and all this stuff, and so it was a wild time. So, but God is good. He's been so faithful. Mm-hmm. A few years back, matter of fact, 2012, I go to get my annual physical, and my doc says, your protein is up, 0.2. Let's keep our eye on it. Mm-hmm. And I'm always good about getting annual physicals, and so I go back the next couple months later, and it's going up a little bit more. So she sends me to see an oncologist, and so now they want to test for cancer. They want to do bone marrow and all that, so I'll never forget. My doc says, he says, when you get home, he says, if you don't hear from me, because he said we should get the results back in the next couple of hours. If you don't hear from me, then we're good. If I call, then something's up. Mm-hmm. So I get home, hit the bottom steps, and the phone rings. It's my doc. He says, yeah, it's active. You do have cancer, it's active. So I'm like, well, what do we do? And he says, we start treatment. I'm like, when? He says, tomorrow. Wow. So for the next year, and it's a multiple myeloma cancer. Okay. And so, and at that time, the lifespan for folks with that cancer was very short. Mm-hmm. So I'm in this fix now. I'm just like, I'm mad at God, and I don't know how to express it. I remember going down the hall, and I just cry out to God, and there was silence. Mm. It was like the silent scream, like the old movie Doberman Gang with the whistle, and the pitch was so high you couldn't hear it. And I would step at night, just anything in my body, I'm like, oh, that's it. Okay, here we go. Yeah. And so went through a full year of treatment, and after that, we just started doing some maintenance kind of stuff, just keeping our eye on it. And the Lord says, I'm giving you a new assignment. And I'm like, okay. And that's kind of what it was. I'm giving you a new assignment. And so So Suzanne and I talk about it, and we talked to the leadership at the church, and we said, hey, look, we feel like God's given us a new assignment, so I want y'all to pray about it. We want them to be a part of that. And so for 2 years, we prayed about it. And that's where the Lord had opened up the door. And during this time, God was raising up other leadership at the church. And Suzanne, she's very good with geography. I mean, she's good with navigation. She is like phenomenal. And so she's looking at, she's like, I feel like God wants us to live somewhere in a peninsula, and so that's how we end up getting here. We wanted to be close to the family, but the Lord had, so after those 2 years, God had, sent us this way, and we thought that the assignment that we were going to walk in was to do more of like a apostolic Pauline kind of ministry, where, because the group of churches that our church was associated with, they had churches all over the place. So I was like, well, maybe I'm going to be visiting these churches for their health, and just kind of, we had a process we would go through to kind of work with the churches, and whether we're doing NCD, National Church Development, or whatever, we had certain things we were working through, but that never worked out. And so we're like, oh man, this is, all right, God, you sent us over here, and the people that we were in relationship with, that's not it. So then we started visiting some other churches, local churches, and put our time in the way they were supposed to see if that's where God wanted us, and that wasn't. It just brought aggravation. We were frustrated, and so pretty much for the next 2 years, 2 years to pray here, and then another 2 years for God to plant us to where we're at now. We felt like where we're at now is the assignment that God had planned for us all along. By the grace of God. So with that, and it was interesting. After that, we got that confirmation from the Lord. This is like, so this would be around 2019.
Okay.
And it was then that my oncologist told me I was in full remission.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And so I'm like, okay, God, I see how, this walk of obedience, it's a walk of faith.
Yeah.
I mean, if I would never in a day, plot this travel,
Yeah.
this circuitous route. But God has been good, and so He continues to watch over us, and we're able to spend good quality time with family, and so the season we're in now is just trying to balance. All right, God, we by faith we know that you gave us a new assignment from where we were serving at, and now we're here through a lot of craziness, and now God, just part of listening, God, is like, how do you navigate? How do you steward? That's the better word. How do I steward my time as it relates to what we say yes to? Because of our, not just military background, but our Christian background, and the way we've served in churches, and pastoring and counseling, and so that can get pretty. We could be doing just as much of what God wanted us to be released from, if we're not careful. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that makes sense. I mean, when you pastor in church, you're responsible for everything.
Yeah, yeah.
So in this new assignment, He's like, I'm giving you a level of pastoral care that you're going to continue to operate in. But so you need to be careful of how you say yes.
Okay.
Like we're having a meeting to talk about X program.
Okay.
And so when you get involved, that's a lot of like now the mental stresses and everything else. And so God says, I want you to take care of people. This is about, don't, let somebody else administrate.
Okay.
But we need, I want you to do what He's called us to do now. and it's a wonderful ministry. I mean, it's a full hands dirty,
Yeah.
and nonstop. You could be 24/7 if you wanted to, But by the grace of God, I believe where we're at, there's good leadership, good opportunity for me to continue to learn and grow and let God use me, and Suzanne's flourishing, and that's the key right there. If she flourish, I flourish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Man, praise God. What another great testimony. My name is Caleb Hurley. This is the Jesus Shift podcast. We've got new testimonies every single week. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, comment something that God has done in your life. God bless and have a great rest of your day.